Harpinder, welcome. Could you tell us about yourself and your journey up to this point?
So I'm someone who's always been passionate about addressing global challenges, particularly tackling poverty and empowering some of the most vulnerable and marginalised people in the world. So as a young student, I studied history and international relations and entered the human rights space and international development, which was a natural path for me. So prior to joining Mercy Corps as executive director, just over 8 months ago, I was chief executive of an organisation called Development Initiatives for over 10 years. And I took this organisation, which was a founder-led organisation, to be known as a partner of choice for data-led analysis and technical services around the world. My background's quite diverse. I've worked for think tanks, I've worked in philanthropy, as well as working in the UN. But pretty much everything that's inspired me is about how do you tackle some of the biggest systemic challenges of the world in particular. As a result, I've had a really exciting journey. I've worked at the European and UK parliaments, but I've lived and worked in Washington, DC, Sierra Leone, Liberia, with short stints in places like Afghanistan, India, Pakistan, etc. as well.
Thank you for that. I mean, I want to ask you, where do you think we are in relation to protecting our planet?
Gosh, it's a big question. I think we've got a lot of work to do, and I think we've got a lot of very urgent work to do as well. The way I always describe our world is that we're living in a VUCA world. I think your audience may be familiar with that term. It's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And in 2023, the world is facing some of the most significant challenges due to climate change, but increasing conflict, much of which is actually driven by a fast changing climate. So we're seeing rising global temperatures, extreme weather events, environmental degradation. All of these are affecting people and communities across the globe. So while we have conflict, yet again in Europe, that increasing conflict across the world in places like the Sahel, the Middle East region, many of this is driven by the fast changing climate that we're seeing in the world, around the world as well. So we've got this incredible amount of soaring cost to living that is increasing as a result of food and energy prices around the world going up. And we're seeing economies being destabilized as a result of the fast changing climate and conflict. All of these are having huge impacts around the world. And I think one of the things I wanted to highlight is the fact that much of the changing climate is impacting that increased frequency and intensity of natural disasters such as hurricanes, floods, wildfires, a leading loss of life, displacement and destruction due to the infrastructure destruction that happens when all of these events strike a particular country or a region around the world. Mercy Corps as an organisation is working quite hard to ensure that we're actually responding to disaster risk reduction by putting in place programmes that will protect vulnerable regions and provide early warning systems and emergency response for communities so that they can be prepared when a disaster strikes.
The next question I'd like to ask you is, what do you think humanity has to do in order to get through this crisis? And do you think we're capable of turning it around?
I think we've got no choice but to turn it around. And I think that's really, really important here. If we are going to survive, and it's our survival that's fundamentally at stake here, we have to ensure that we're tackling some of the biggest challenges in front of us at the moment. Escalating food insecurity, malnutrition, water scarcity, access issues, all of these things are compounding challenges, particularly for some of the most vulnerable people in society. So we as a global community have to come together to look at what are the most essential issues that we need to deal with and how do we go about dealing with them with the urgency that is really required here. I think sometimes what I find incredible is that although we talk about this language of urgency, emergency, climate emergency, the importance of these issues immediately, we're still struggling to really make that turn into particularly political action and in a way that it needs to be seen. And so that urgency needs to transfer from those of us who are really embedded in communities and seeing the complete impact on human human livelihoods at the moment, to those who are in positions of power and able to do something about it as well. One of the things that I'd highlight as incredibly important, which we're all facing, not just those people who are in some of the most insecure environments, but all of us, is around the issue of food insecurity and malnutrition. We're seeing escalating costs of food in the UK at the moment. This is a big subject of conversation. But this is being impacted not just due to the conflict in Ukraine, which is often used as a region, but it's the change in the food system, the changing weather patterns, drought, crop failures. All of these things are having a huge impact on the global food system. And it's really important we look at how we address these challenges. So Mercy Corps as an organisation has developed what we call sustainable agricultural programs. These are really about helping communities promote climate smart farming techniques, water management systems, and diversification of livelihoods, helping communities adapt and build resilience to climate related food challenges. We need to see more of this sort of programming in place. So we have to adapt to the fast changing climate, and we need much more funding and investment going to these areas, because at the end of the day, climate is changing, and unless we adapt, we will not be able to survive.
You're the Executive Director of Mercy Corps Europe. Could you tell us about your organisation and the incredibly important work that you do?
Absolutely, absolutely. Mercy Corps Europe is a multi-approach agency. We work largely in humanitarian context, but we work on providing emergency support to people who are in crisis, but we also help support them to actually build their resilience, to be able to tackle the shocks of climate and conflict, which unfortunately, like I'm saying, will continue to affect populations around the world. So a large part of our portfolio is really focused on food security, water and sanitation, economic opportunities and livelihoods, and also peace and governance, so that people can survive, they can cope, they can adapt, and they can thrive in the environments which they're living in. Mercy Corps as an organisation is based in some of the most conflict-affected, vulnerable, fragile contexts around the world. We're in over 40, probably about 46 or 47 countries now around the world, and we're operating in some of the most complex environments as a result of the challenges that conflict and climate change are bringing into these communities. We as an organisation are working directly with communities and local partners to try to build the resilience of communities so that they can ultimately adapt and thrive to the challenges that they face. Our programs include climate smart agriculture programs, supporting farmers to adapt their farming practices with drought-resistant seeds. For example, we also ensure that crops are resilient to the changing weather patterns. We provide disaster preparedness training and support communities with training to help them diversify their livelihoods. Any support that you can offer to help us continue to deliver this programming is incredibly appreciated, and it is essential to ensure that the people who are most in need of support are able to get it and able to thrive in the areas, locations where they are resident. As an organisation, we are also advocating for policy change and international cooperation to address climate change at a systemic level. Mercy Corps engages in policy advocacy. It collaborates with governments, international organisations and local partners to promote climate-centric policies. We mobilise resources and create an enabling environment for climate action. So we're always keen to work and partner with others, particularly those who are committed to the same vision that we are, to be able to actually push this agenda at that policy level and at the international level to ensure that we get the change we need as soon as possible.
So if people would like to support Mercy Corps Europe, how can they best do that?
That's great. Well, it's very easy to support us as an organisation. Please just log on to our website, mercycorps.org, where you can actually make a contribution to any of our programming areas. It's really important that we're able to raise the money that goes to those people who are most affected to support the different types of programming. So mercycorps.org is a great way to support us and demonstrate your commitment to these causes. We as an organisation are based around Europe as well, doing some interesting work. We're also highly attuned to the challenges around the political environment. So we're constantly involved in campaigns and communications into governments as well. So we're very keen to hear from people who are interested in doing more and raising particular issues with their own political parties as well. So please do get in touch if you're interested, but mainly we would love to see you support us in getting that funding into communities so that they can adapt to the fast changing climate. Individuals can contribute to addressing climate change in several ways. First of all, they can also reduce their own carbon footprint by conserving energy and using public transportation and adapting to sustainable practices in daily life. Secondly, they can support organisations and initiatives such as Mercy Corps that are focused on climate adaptation through donations, volunteering or advocacy. Thirdly, it's important that they engage in sustainable consumption by choosing eco-friendly products and reducing waste and supporting local sustainable food systems. Fourthly, raising awareness about climate change and its impacts within their communities, but also within their governing officials as well, which is where we want to see more action. And then that leads me on to the final point around advocating for climate-centric policies and increasing funding and encouraging elected representatives to prioritise climate action.
Thank you, Harpinder. Good luck with everything, and thank you so much for doing Climate Action Live.
Thank you so much.